everyone. It's Catherine Jelinek with the Skinny Platform, and I'm thrilled today to be here with Paul Detlefs to share about his nugget. Paul, tell us about your nugget.
Well, my nugget, Catherine, is about how to get your rocks done. So I want to share a few tips. I had a client about a month and a half ago who had like 3 quarters in a row of, 95 to 100% rock completion. And I said, what, what have you done? And it turned out that they'd basically done a lot of stuff that I'd told them to do, and they had actually done it. And so this isn't any different than I tell all my clients, but when you actually do it, it actually works.
And sometimes it's just following through on the certain steps and really carrying it out, and things magically occur the way you might have intended them to. Can you walk us through that process then? What are they doing to get those rocks done?
So I think the real key is to have a plan for your rocks, for each rock. Um, it's interesting. I first ran across this concept 11 or 12 years ago. I visited with a company in Lexington, Kentucky. I had a client in Lexington, a couple in Louisville. I'm from Louisville. And they were self implementing EOS, and they were in the business of, they were project and program managers. And, as project managers, they believed in, project planning, and a rock is like a little project. And so they had something they called a rock charter, which was for each rock they had a plan for how to get the rock done. So I think that's the first thing, is to have a plan. So would you like me to walk you through what should be in that plan?
Yes, of course I would. And can you just, if I'm, this book that we're contributing to is for mostly EOS clients and people familiar with EOS. But in case someone's not familiar with EOS, could you just define a rock as well, briefly for
Yeah, a
us?
rock is a quarterly priority. And we at the company level, we recommend 3 to 7. Less is more. If everything's important, nothing's important. So we force people to prioritize and select the 3 to 7 most important things they have to get done in a 90-day period. And it's usually not sort of day-to-day day job stuff. It's stuff to build a better future for the business. It might be to fix something that's broken, but more commonly it's to build something new and better. Stephen Covey talks about things that are there's the Covey quadrant of urgency versus importance, and rocks are things that are important but not urgent. Since they're not urgent, we tend to live in the tyranny of the urgent, and we never get around to them. And so by calling these out once a quarter and focusing on them, having a weekly meeting to share with our peers, peer-to-peer accountability, whether they're on track or not, we get more of that stuff that's not urgent but is important. We get more of that done.
You create that urgency through the accountability in a way.
Right. Yep.
Fantastic. So now tell us about how you actually create the charters to get these rocks accomplished.
Yeah. So, and the value isn't the plan itself; it's the planning. It's nothing's going to go exactly as planned, but just stepping back and thinking about how you're going to get this done. So, we set rocks in our quarterly meetings, and within 1 or 2 weeks after the quarterly, you take some quiet time for each rock you have, and you put together a plan. So the plan should include some things like being real clear, maybe even rewording the rock as to what done looks like, because the rocks are either done or not done. There's no, oh, I almost got it done. It's very black and white. And so a good description of what done looks like. So it's not just a topic. It's not like new computer system. No, it's develop a plan for implementing the new computer systems. The deliverable would be the written plan, that sort of thing. Obviously, we know what date the rock is due, because it's due at the next meeting. And here's some questions that you might ask yourself. Why is this important? What happens if it's not done? what's a description of what success will look like? What impact will it have on the business? What are some of the obstacles I need to overcome? And really important, what resources do I need to get this done? And very, very important, who will I need help from? What other functions or departments might need to help me? Because if we can't coordinate that, if we're assuming we need help from somebody and they don't know about it, then they might have not have time. Maybe they've got rocks they're working on. So those are some key questions. And then really important is develop some milestones. So what are the 3, 4, 5 steps that we have to take in order to get the rock done? And that first step is the most important. EOS as a whole is it's kind of a work breakdown structure. Anyone in project management or construction or whatever knows. I mean, can you imagine how they build these huge highway projects and the detail they have to put together? It's breaking down the work into chunks. What are the pieces? When do they have to get done? Who's going to do them? And so, just a simple version of that would be, let's say that we're going to select a new computer system as our rock. Well, the first step might be to put together a list of what the options are, right? And maybe I get that done in 2 weeks. And then the second step might be to talk to the vendors on the phone or do a demo or something like that. Ultimately we'll get to. So again, 3, 4, 5 steps. The first, it's really important because some of these tasks are overwhelming and we don't start them because we're overwhelmed by how much work it is. And what's the Chinese proverb? The longest journey starts with the first step. And so if you can have a small first step that'll get you going, you'll get momentum and you'll keep going. The other thing is it keeps you honest. Some of our teams, their rule is that if you don't have a rock plan done at, so I had a team that I met with today, and maybe their weekly level 10 is on Friday. So we're not going to say this Friday, but by next Friday. Actually, I met with a team yesterday, and they said that not by this Friday, but by next Friday, the 30th, they would have their rock plans done. And if the plan is not done for the rock is off track. The rock is declared off track if it doesn't have a plan. So it keeps you honest as to whether you're on track, off track. And then you've got these milestones with dates. Each of those steps has a date. And if you don't hit the date for the milestone, then the rock's off track. So that's the first. That's the most important thing, I think, is to do some.
I just want to underscore something you said about that first, the longest journey starts with one step. And I didn't say the proverb perfectly there, but
No,
the
neither did I.
idea, well, but in this case, the concept is if you look at this and you feel overwhelmed with the first thing you're setting out to do to accomplish the rock, perhaps considering if things can be broken down to even smaller steps.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
And with the core, what I'm hearing too in the background is these smaller steps create momentum
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
and enable further progress and feeling like, wow, we're actually starting to shift something here with the rock.
Yep. Yep.
Fantastic. So then this client that you're referring to that is doing, 100%, 95% on rock completion, they've just really gotten very thorough, it sounds like, in terms of mapping out their milestones and the resources and anticipated hurdles.
Yeah. I mean, there's more to it. I've got some other tips I can go through if you want me to. So
Definitely.
so the second thing is, if there is another team member or a third party, like a consultant or some vendor or something, you should share your rock with them. So anyone you're going to need help from needs to know about your rock. The next thing is, um, like this client that set a week from Friday as their due date. They should plan. You should plan in your level 10 meeting to have a longer rock review. In other words, the rock review part of the meeting will be to quickly present the plan for each of the rocks, so that your teammates can help you. Well, what about this? What about that? Anyway, you get some feedback, and you'll have a better plan if you can review it with some colleagues. Okay. Another thing is you need to schedule maybe in the middle of the quarter. You should again maybe spend a little more time on the rocks and kind of a check-in meeting on rock status. Obviously we check on rock status at every meeting, but it can be a little perfunctory. So, maybe once a quarter in the middle of the quarter, just remind people of their rocks and get them to be open and honest about the status. That can be really helpful. Obviously, some healthy conflict. First of all, the rock owner being honest about whether things are off track and asking for help, being vulnerable like that is really helpful. And conversely, their team members, if they're really suspicious or they're not sure the rock sounds like it's on track, they should challenge the rock owner. Is that really on track? What have you done so far? Questions like that, because this is peer-to-peer accountability. I've had clients where the integrator, wanted to check in with everybody on their rocks every week, and no, that's not what we need. But some accountability from teammates is really helpful. Two other things is you've got to schedule some rock time on your calendar. So, one of the things I like to always ask in a quarterly meeting about looking back at the rocks, particularly if they didn't get as many done as they should have, were they the right ones? And, we do our best job predicting. That's kind of hindsight. But did we start them early? And the milestone plan can help you start rocks early. And then did we spend enough time on them? Did we block time to spend, rock time? We have our day-to-day jobs. We have stuff that we can't predict that's going to happen. And then we have rock time, and we've got to predict, how much we're going to need for each. And then, so scheduling some deep work time blocks for rocks, maybe off-site, maybe you stay home one morning or you go home early one afternoon, or you go to the library or something. And the final idea is, I think it's very important to present the results of your rock at a meeting before the due date. I had a client once who walked into a quarterly meeting and it was starting at 8:30, and 8:29 he hit the button on his computer and he said, "Done," because he had finished it, but no one had seen it or knew anything about it. And I don't know if we talked about it at the quarterly meeting, but it's really better if you have a rule or write into the rock, presented to a leadership team. It's not, you don't necessarily have to have it all signed off and approved and buttoned up, but it should at least be, presented to the leadership team prior to the due date. So those are all things that this client did, and it really helped them get.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Those are very detailed, and I appreciate that because I feel like you can begin to really understand how these small details add up to bigger progress. Things like putting that time on your calendar,
Right.
or else it doesn't show up, that opportunity, especially for
But
non-urgent
then
items.
you have to protect that time on your calendar, and you have to honor it. We're really good. I am really good at, if I have an appointment like with Catherine for a video call, at
Yeah,
having that on my calendar and protecting it. And it would be very embarrassing to miss the call. I'm really good at blowing off meetings with myself.
I understand that. Me too. Perhaps those are the places too where successful clients like yours are even enlisting other people to hold them accountable for those meetings.
Could be, yeah. I mean, one other idea some people have used is kind of have a rock captain for the quarter. You can rotate that, but or it could just be the integrator, but somebody who is all over the rocks and kind of the captain for the quarter of getting rocks done, making sure people are doing these things.
Wow. You're an endless source of different ways
Ideas.
to weave in new ideas for the rocks and their completion. That's fantastic. Well, Paul, I feel like this is pretty complete and really robust for anyone who's looking for more information on how to actualize on their rocks. So thank you so much for this.
Good. Okay.
Cool. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Thanks.
This episode of the Podcast of Nuggets is presented by The Skinny Platform and is released in support of Freedom Reads, a national nonprofit opening handcrafted, curated 500-book libraries in prison cell blocks across America. Freedom libraries are more than just books. They are lifelines. They bring connection, hope, and dignity to prisons. Learn more at freedomreads.org. Freedom begins with a book.